Kansas has a chance to beat its biggest rival and prove it's one of the best teams in the Big 12 all in one. It's a big Saturday. We preview Kansas, Missouri, and the next edition of the Border Showdown, Border War.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day, and thank you to the everydayers for catching each and every episode of the show. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on today's edition of LOJ, we're talking a little KU, Missouri. What else would we be talking about? Previewing the Border War, Border Showdown, whatever you want to call it. It's KU's biggest rival, and we're going to preview the game, get to our top storylines, news from the week. We'll get to our Missouri scouting report. We'll get to our matchups of the game. And then coming on Friday's episode, we'll have our keys of the game, players to watch, and plenty more. Today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Mazda. Just like there's more to every player, more dedication, more attention to detail, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Stay tuned later in the episode for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda, move and be moved. So Kansas takes on Missouri Saturday at 2:30 Central Time. It's obviously in Columbia. It's going to be a ruckus environment. It's going to be a very difficult place for Kansas to play. And it's funny because, you think back to the pre-Lance Leipold days, and Kansas could not win on the road. What was it, like 48 or something straight losses to like power conference opponents on the road? I think it was 46 to anyone on the road before they won at Central Michigan when like Puka Williams and company went off. And now Lance Leipold, it's just like, okay, they win at Texas, and then from then on, they're like winning at West Virginia. They're winning all these road games now to where it's like, oh my gosh, this is possible, right? But I think the biggest storyline coming into this one has to just be the fact that, like, the game in itself is the storyline. The rivalry is the storyline, right? I can talk about, Lance Leipold versus Eli Drinkwitz or Jalon Daniels, or it's just the rivalry. Like, that is the biggest storyline that is happening here. It's the 121st meeting all time between these two, top 10 meetings of two schools ever in college football history. And it was even higher than that until they, stopped playing with Missouri leaving for the SEC. This is the first meeting since Missouri left for the SEC, which the last meeting overall was 2011. Missouri's won 3 straight in the series. Overall, Kansas now has a chance to even up the series because Kansas is down 1 game. Now, if you look at Missouri records, they'll claim they're up another game from that. We went over this earlier in the week. Thank you to everydayers who already caught it. That 1960 game when Kansas beat number 1 Missouri, there was later a player that was ruled ineligible, and Missouri ended up counting it as a win for them. Kansas still counts it as a win for them, which is just perfect for rivalry lore in college football. But not only is this the first meeting since 2011, this is the first meeting on campus since 2006, right? Those games were being played at Arrowhead, which had certain things that were cool about it. I think, honestly, like, it kind of worked out for the 2007 meeting. That it happened to be at Arrowhead, given the stakes of the game. But I think overall, like, these games are meant to be on campus, right? That's the best environments for college sports. Now, what I find interesting here, beyond the most important storyline, again, is the rivalry aspect. That is what college sports is built on. You just want to beat your rival. You want to have the bragging rights for 365, right? I think beyond that, like, we can talk about, what does this mean for the Kansas season? I think from the Missouri side of things, if they win this game, it's just more important for them to win the game from the rivalry side. If they win the game, there's not going to be national conversations if Missouri wins the game about, does this mean Missouri is an SEC title contender? They still have a lot of fish to fry if they want to do that. But from the Kansas perspective, I mean, it would help the Big 12, certainly. But if Kansas wins this game on the road against a Missouri team that is seen as you look at ESPN SB Plus, a top 20 team, you look at ESPN FPI, a top 25 team. If Kansas wins on the road against an SEC school with a lot of talent, it's hard not to view that as like, okay, well, Kansas can beat anyone in the Big 12, and Kansas, even if they're not the betting favorite, Kansas will certainly be one of the betting favorites if they win this game to win the Big 12, right? You see what they did in their first game against Fresno State, and then what Fresno State did after against a pretty good, I forget if it's Georgia State or Georgia Southern team, but regardless, you look at this game, this is an opportunity too for Kansas to show that, hey, we can win the Big 12 too, right? A win like this would go a long way toward, having that kind of feeling. I also find this interesting from the KU game notes. under Lance Leipold, Kansas has recorded 5 wins against top 25 opponents. Leipold matches Bud Moore from 1975 to 1978 for the most wins against top 25 opponents over their KU careers. From 2010 to 2021, Kansas was 0-44 against top 25 opponents, with its last win coming against number 15 Georgia Tech. That was the Turner Gill, September 11th of 2010. So, again, Leipold matching Bud Moore for the most wins against top 25 opponents in their career. That means Kansas has an opportunity here, to surpass that this season with Lance Leipold. You look at some of the news of this game coming into the week. It seems like the injury bug is upon us, and certainly is a storyline coming to this one. From the Missouri side of things, we had the conversation earlier this week, and if you missed it, catch our Locked On crossover where we talked to the Missouri side of things and got a little insight on their side of things. Their kicker is out for the year, and he hit some long field goals against a good kicker. So if this is going to end up being a close game, certainly that could have an impact there. You think of it having an impact in a couple ways, and this is what was brought up. Like, does it make Missouri go for it and be more aggressive on 4th down? And if you're rolling the dice, that could go either way in a specific game, right? That could be bad for KU. That could be good for KU if they make the stops. It just depends how it would go. Or do we see them take the field goals anyway, and then it causes a shakier operation where it causes a miss here or there? They added kind of a last minute transfer to the kicker position, so we'll see how that goes for the Missouri side. But that's kind of their biggest injury. It's a little bit more, I don't know, who knows? At the end of the day, one kick could be the difference in a game, so that could be a super impactful thing. But from the Kansas perspective, you would think that their injuries could end up being a little bit more problematic. It just depends, because you look at Missouri under Eli Drinkwitz, they've consistently been a very strong rushing team, and that seems to be no different this year. You have Beau Pribula, who's a good rushing quarterback. Ahmad Hardy had, through his first season last year, plus 1 game this year, has over 1,400 career rushing yards. Really good running back for them. They're going to have a strong running game, and you immediately think of the front seven, the defensive line, the linebackers as being the guys who are going to stop that. Well, Kansas linebacking core has been hit hard by the injury bug. You look at Joseph Sipp, who got injured in fall camp. He's yet to appear in a game so far this season. He was a former All-MAC linebacker. Doesn't really seem like he's going to be back for this game for KU. You look at Bengali Kamara, who looked good in the first game of the season against Fresno State, and then suffered a non-contact injury leading up to the second game of the season, missed that game. Now, certainly when you heard non-contact injury, that makes the alarm bells go off, because a lot of times when that happens, it ends up being very lengthy injuries. Sounds like KU and Bengali Kamara may be a little fortunate there, and then it might just be a few weeks. So maybe you're looking at that one and saying, okay, maybe he'll miss the Missouri game, maybe he'll miss the bye week, and then hopefully he's back for the West Virginia game, or maybe he's back later in the season. But it sounds like he could be coming back based on some of those reports that came out. We mentioned the On-3 one earlier this week on Locked On Jayhawks. But point being, even if he is back, he's not back for this game. At least that would be my assumption based on kind of what's happened there. So 2 of your linebackers who, at one point early in fall camp, those were your 2 projected starting linebackers. Now, maybe Trey Lathan would have beat Joseph Sipp out regardless. But point being, those are 2 talented players of a linebacker unit that we talked a lot about in the offseason that seemed like it was much improved from a unit that has at times been a problem for KU in the past. And now you get to a point where it's okay, well, you have Trey Lathan. You're going to be counting on him a lot. And I think Trey Lathan's looked really good through the first 2 games of the season for KU. This is another animal with Missouri, but also, it makes it even tougher when, now you're going to be playing alongside some of these other guys. Can you not just be a good player? Can you be a good leader and help them along on the field? John Kamara, who you would have loved to get a lot of reps in that Wagner game to get even more ready for this game, ends up starting that Wagner game, but he gets out in the first quarter with the targeting call. He will be fully available for this Missouri game, and from an athletic standpoint, he's going to be as good athletically as anybody Missouri has on the field, even though he wasn't a 4-star recruit. Athletically, he should have been a 4 or 5-star recruit with how much of a freak athlete that he is. But how green are you? How, the experience level, what does that matter? What if Logan Brantley gets on the field? What if Ezra Vidral, a former walk-on, gets on the field? Does that end up being problematic for KU? So some of these things are going to be very interesting, especially in this matchup with the KU linebacker core. How much does it cost them, or can they figure out a way to make it work? Can Trey Lathan and some of those guys have monster games regardless? I think of Iowa State last year, who made it to the Big 12 title game, and they were on 3rd and 4th string linebackers. So it is doable, but it's going to make it a little more difficult against Missouri. All right, let's get into that Missouri scouting report next. This is Locked on Jayhawks. Today's episode of LOJ is brought to you by Upside. Are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. I know Don Famborough, former KU football coach, he would have definitely used the Upside app on the Kansas side if he was using it. He wouldn't be using it on the Missouri side. Use my limited time promo code FOOTBALL and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes. And you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now by using my limited time promo code FOOTBALL for a limited time 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code FOOTBALL. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Today's episode of the show is also brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what makes or what moves them button every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. As an athlete focuses on every detail, Mazda's is the same. From metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather, you can feel it the moment you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, intuitive controls, and standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. It's the small details that make the small plays. Not too dissimilar from when Kansas had the Daniel Hishaw 20-yard rushing touchdown against Wagner. It wasn't just about Hishaw soaring through the middle. You had a couple good double-team blocks on the inside. You had Calvin Clements pancaking his defender at the second level. You had receivers blocking downfield, and then you had Hishaw with the stiff arm and kind of running through and getting the touchdown. Those small details led to the big play. And with Mazda, it's just like that. And just like there's more to every player and every play, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked on Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe. And don't forget to check out Locked on College Football. Okay, so you look at Missouri there, 1-0 on the season, beat up Central Arkansas 61-6. Not a great FCS team. Obviously, Wagner wasn't either from the Kansas perspective. But point being, I don't know how much we learned about Missouri in their first game, but we didn't really learn anything too negative for them, and that's a good place to be, right? If you're going to play that game, you might as well not really show much weakness. But this has been a really successful program the last couple of years. They were kind of hovering around more of a 500 program the first couple of years for Drinkwitz in Missouri, but then the last 2 years, they've had their breakouts. 10-3 last season, 11-2 the year before with that New Year's Six Bowl victory over Ohio State. And Drinkwitz is now in his sixth season for Missouri after coming over from Appalachian State, where he had a successful season there. You look at the rankings for this team, they're 16th on ESPN SP Plus, which gives them the number 27 offense and the number 11 defense. Only gives them number 95 on special teams, which also without a kicker, that could be interesting. ESPN FPI, they're 19th. So by those two places, top 20 in the country. Now, what's interesting, if you look at Phil Steele and Pick Six Previews, picks them as a bottom half team in the SEC this year coming into the season. But the irony, the crazy part of that is the fact that even if you're picked as a bottom half team in the SEC, that can be like a top 20 team in the country. That can be like a top 25 team in the country. And points, proofs in the pudding. Like if Missouri's 16th and 19th in some of these metric sites, even if that has them a little higher in the SEC, you still have schools like LSU, Alabama, Georgia, Texas. Like you go on and on. You could finish 8th in the SEC and be the 18th best team in the country. So I don't look at that as much, but you do look at it, and some places are a little lower on them just from a standpoint of, okay, last year, even though they won 10 games, it was a bit of they didn't have a lot of the harder teams in the SEC, and credit to them for still, taking advantage and winning 10 games, but they went 6-1 in one score games, and they were plus 11 in turnovers. And a lot of times those two things can kind of ebb and flow from year to year, right? And so if those, maybe they won't, but if both of those things do flow a little bit this year and they end up with more of an even turnover rate, or they end up more 500 in one-score games, then that's how the record kind of goes down for Missouri. And I think the hope would be for this game that, like, maybe this will be one of those swing games where it is a reversion to the mean and Missouri's -2 in turnovers and loses a one-score game. Who knows? They also have low returning starters on the offensive end of the ball. You look at it in some of the places that rank the position groups compared to the conference, the running back room, receiver unit, defensive line, and parts of the O-line are kind of seen as the team's biggest strengths, although there are a lot of questions on the offensive line room. The proven experience at quarterback in power games, and then some defensive back questions. But overall, it's a very talented team. And specifically, with that offensive line, it's an interesting unit because they bring back, it's kind of similar to Kansas in a way, in that, like, okay, Kansas has Bryce Foster and Kobe Baines, and then it's like you have talented Calvin Clements, but you're bringing on some new players. Well, they have a center back in Connor Tolson, who's been really good. Left guard Caden Green was really good for them at guard, was being seen as like an all-conference, guard in the preseason, but he moved to left tackle. And then they added 3 transfer portal power 4 linemen who had a combined 20 starts. So just kind of interesting how it meshes together, and a position change with Caden Green. But overall, I mentioned their talent level. If you look at their 5-year recruiting rank average, it's 19th in the country. And their 2-year transfer portal average rank is 6th. So over the last 5 years, basically the last 5 high school classes that have built up the team, they've on average been a top 20 high school recruiting class. And over the last 2 transfer portal classes, which that's typically going to be older players, they're averaging out to be a top 10 class. So, like, point being, you can understand what it means when you hear this team is talented. I don't know if this is going to be the best team KU is going to face this year. Like, I tend to think that'll be, I don't know, maybe a Utah. We'll see what, like, the talent comes together with Texas Tech. Certainly that'll be an interesting, team for Texas Tech this year. I'm trying to think of maybe Iowa State or something. Like, it could be one of those teams. But if we're just talking from pure talent, right? Talent isn't everything, but just from pure talent, and it's a tough and road environment, you can see why this will be a very difficult game for KU. You look at the quarterback position for Missouri. Sam Cook was the original starter. He got hurt on the first drive, so Beau Pribula came in, and he was actually the guy that many predicted to be the starter, coming in as a high-profile transfer portal addition from Penn State, where he ends up coming in against Central Arkansas and looks like he would have been the starter. 23 of 28, 283 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 10 carries, 65 yards, 2 more scores. Super accurate throwing downfield in that first game, at least, which probably more guys are open, so that's helpful. But 9 of 11 for 184 yards on passing, 10 or more yards downfield, so that'll be interesting against KU. He is a 6'2" senior. A lot of success coming in as a running quarterback in sets for Penn State with Andy Kotelnicki, but actually had solid passing stats in limited time last year too. I think he's a good player. I think DK McDonald this week in press conference called him like one of the best college quarterbacks he's faced, which that felt a little extreme for a guy who didn't win the job straight up coming out, but like he certainly looked really good in that first week of the season. And the big question there is just like, okay, he's done it in small sample sizes and in certain packages. What is he going to, because he's only had 1 game in his career against a power 4 opponent where he's thrown double-digit passes. Now, albeit he was 11 of 13, went for 98 yards and rushed for more in a 15-point win against Wisconsin. But yeah, that'll kind of be the question here. Key stats to the game for Missouri. 5 happy stats, the good stats for them. They finished 2024 17th in yards allowed per game. Really good defense and brought a lot back. They finished 5th in 2024 in third down conversion rate against at just 30%. So again, you see the defense really able to get you off the field on third downs. Missouri ranked top 35 nationally in pass and run blocking, or ranks right now on Pro Football Focus. Again, though, albeit against Central Arkansas, so take it with a grain of salt. They currently rank 4th in coverage grade right now, so really good coverage week 1. Again, asterisk of Central Arkansas, but still. They were also 21st nationally in plays per game last year on offense. I don't think they're like a super heavy tempo team, but certainly they're going to run some more plays than not, and I'm sure they'll mix in some tempo here and there, and that's been a problem for the KU defense in years past. We'll see how they handle it if they do bring it out at any point this year. 5 sad stats for Missouri. They rank 93rd in tackling grade after week 1. So not a great tackling game in week 1 for Missouri, according to Pro Football Focus. They finished 81st in offensive line run push last year and only 66th in sack rate allowed. And in week 1, they were outside the top 50 in both. 56th in O-line run push, 57th in sack rate allowed. So again, there could be some questions of the offensive line. I don't think it's a bad offensive line, but maybe it's just an average offensive line. And can Kansas take advantage of that? They also finished just outside the top 50 last year in EPA per game, total EPA, and success rate against the pass as a defense. So maybe there's going to be some opportunity. They do have some portal additions to the secondary, but maybe some opportunity throwing the ball on this defense if you're KU. Overall, they averaged just 290 yards per game in their 3 losses last year. So like when it was bad, it was ugly. They got blown out in 2 of those 3 losses, albeit to really good opponents. But overall, they also gave up 4 yards per carry, which doesn't sound like a lot in a college game, but given it was Central Arkansas and they had 154 total rushing yards, that actually puts Missouri right now in the bottom 50 of the country in terms of, total rushing yards allowed and rushing yards per carry allowed. And again, it came versus Central Arkansas. So you could argue that in the same way that some of the stats look good because you played them, if there's a stat that looked average or below average, what does that mean for some better opponents? And one area I'm specifically looking at here is Missouri gave up 12 carries for 79 yards. That's 6.6 yards per carry between running through so if we take to the right of the center all the way to the right of the right tackle, but left of the tight end, between that area, they average 6.6 yards per carry. And this season, which would be Foster, Baines, Cruz, or Gorsica for KU, basically running to that side, KU's averaging 6.6 yards per carry there too. So we'll see if that gets taken advantage of in any way in this game. But let's talk more about the matchups of the game next. This is Locked On Jayhawks. And today's episode of the show is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered. Powered by DoorDash, just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered the most. Let's break it down. For the Kansas Jayhawks, we're going to go with Emmanuel Henderson, delivered in a big way. Over 100 receiving yards. Cam Pickett was a little banged up, still played, but you wanted that explosive player, right? And you think about the play to start the second half. Kansas is winning comfortably, but you're still looking to put the game away, and you're looking to, get to a big enough lead that your backups can get valuable reps. Your young players can get valuable reps. Well, you hit the deep ball from Jalon Daniels to Emmanuel Henderson, who gets open, makes the catch, 62-yard touchdown. Again, ends up with over 100 yards receiving. He came through, and, if you've been watching week after week, I don't think this is going to be a fluke for him. He started the season hot versus Fresno State on the first 2 drives, had I think 3 catches. I don't know if he had another catch from then, but I think he's going to have a big game or a big opportunity to against Missouri. And so just like Emmanuel Henderson delivered for the Jayhawks, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday for your order. Stack it up all season. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11-18. That is November 18th. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. All right, matchups of the game for Kansas versus Missouri. First down, battle in the trenches. If you look at NFL mock draft database, which is basically just like a consensus mock draft, they take all the different mock drafts from across, the land, and they put them together, and you get a consensus big board out of it, right? I don't know if it's the most accurate more than one person or another, but at least it, gives you something. Missouri has 2 guys in the top 70 for the 2026 NFL draft. They also have 6 players in the top 315, which puts you at least in draftable range. And of those 6 players, 5 of the 6 are offensive or defensive linemen. And the only one that's not is a tight end who is also going to play on the line of scrimmage at times, right? So that is where their bread is buttered, so to speak. So for the KU defense, this means big games from that defensive tackle group that we lauded all offseason. It means big games from Justice Finkley and Alex Bray, who have played in some big games at Texas and Illinois. It means Dean Miller showing why he's all Big 12 second team. For the KU offense, it means, Bryce Foster, Kobe Baines, Kelvin Clements come into play. It means whoever you're playing between Amir Harry and Tabaki Tuiko Lovato at guard and Nolan Gorsica or Enrique Cruz at tackle. It means you got to be on your A game, because if you're not going to be running much. They're going to run all over you. Jalon Daniels is going to be picking it, and you're not going to get pressure on Beau Pribula. So that is where this game is going to be won, in the trenches. Second down, quarterback running game. This goes for both sides as well. What is Kansas going to get out of Jalon Daniels here? Only 3 carries against Wagner, which I think is smart, right? You don't want to use those bullets, so to speak, on a game like that. We saw him run a little bit more against Fresno State. Probably took a little too many hits from what your liking would be. In this game, though, it's kind of one of those throw it out the window games. Can you keep him healthy doing so while also using the run game a little bit more to your advantage? Now, on the flip side, Pribula has over 600 career rushing yards, over 6 yards per carry, and 12 touchdowns. He had 65 yards in week 1. 31-yard run was his long in that first week of the season. And you look at last year, like Kansas gave up 124 to Sluka, 87 to Garrett Green, 77 to Sam Levitt, 67 to Avery Johnson. The leading rusher for the opponent was the quarterback 4 times out of the 12 games against KU last year. And in total, Kansas gave up 466 rushing yards to quarterbacks. And keep in mind that accounts for the lost yards on sacks. Kansas actually had 161 sack yards last year. So that basically means if you take that out, Kansas gave up over 600 rushing yards to quarterbacks last year. That's basically over 50 per game. That is a good amount, but it's a new defensive coordinator in there in DK McDonald. What does that look like? Like, how helpful is that for KU in defending the quarterback run? Because you got a good one you're going up against in Beau Pribula this week. Third down is the third down chess match. Missouri has been really solid defensively on third downs. We mentioned that at the outset that last year they were one of the better teams in the country getting off the field on third down. Kansas actually low-key, even despite the 5-7 season, was one of the best third down offenses in the country last year, though. And so that's going to be kind of that movable force versus unstoppable object type of matchup between the two that should be a lot of fun. Now, on the flip side, you have Missouri, who's facing a not as experienced starting quarterback in Beau Pribula. He can pick up that third down on that key scramble, so that goes back in line with, stopping the quarterback run there. But also in general, you have a new DC. He's already shown some flashes in DK McDonald of some new, unique, fun stuff. I think that's going to be an intriguing matchup. And this is where we're really going to see for the first time, what does that full playbook look like for DK McDonald, and how creative and exotic is it going to get on third down, especially against, like I said, a quarterback who's been very good and is older, but he hasn't started a lot of Power 4 football games. Fourth down is finish. Kansas was outscored 91-69 in the fourth quarter last year. They were 1-5 in one-score games. These are numbers, well, at least the 1-5 is one that everybody remembers, right? Missouri outscored their opponents 104-55 in the fourth quarter. They were 6-1 in one-score games. Now, we did see a game last year where I think coming into the game, Kansas was 0-5 in one-score games, and at the time, BYU was 5-0 in one-score games, and Kansas won the games. Sometimes weird things happen, and maybe that's where that reversion comes in. And that's the hope for Kansas, that if it is a close game, the reversion comes in. But KU talked all offseason about finishing and closing things out. Well, if Vegas is projecting this as a one-score game, that means you're going to have the opportunity to do just that if that's the case in the fourth quarter. And if you want to pull off the win on the road against a talented opponent in a rivalry game, chances are, it's going to come down to the fourth quarter plays. And do you make those plays at the end and make the clutch plays and the close plays? That's what's going to determine this at the very end. So is it going to be different than last year? Are they going to have the opportunity to do so? You got to finish if you want to win this football game. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get podcasts, including on our YouTube page, where you can like and subscribe to the show. See you on Friday for a little more content with KU Missouri, talking players to watch and plenty more with LOJ.